Well, hello. I'm Doug Jackson, founding attorney of the law firm of Douglas G. Jackson. We're back again with our fifth monthly newsletter. Like before, and like every time here to come, I've written a letter to you, my friends of the firm, that I want to read to you. Again, this month, much has happened in the firm and in America. Though this is not as raw and controversial as my June 2022 newsletter, it's undoubted that many Americans and our readers will disagree on opinions and outcomes. Though this letter attempts to take a neutral and objective approach, disagreement is bound to happen. Well, here we go. Dear friends of the firm, much has happened since my last letter to you. We celebrated Father's Day, Juneteenth, and Pride. Daniele Green began as our newest and final summer legal intern of 2022. I submitted an article to the Paraclete, the publication of the St. Pete Bar Association, which will be published in its next issue. However, perhaps the most notable and controversial things that happened were those having to do with our system of justice, including numerous controversial United States Supreme Court decisions. One decision greatly broadened the Second Amendment. For gun advocates, this was a victory. For advocates of stronger gun laws, this was a major setback. In reality, this will likely not change most of the day-to-day lives of most Americans. Another decision was one that broadened the amount of religious practice one can perform in a school setting. For some, this was a strengthening of the freedom of religion. For others, this was a weakening of the separation of church and state, and they argued that had the prayer been led by someone practicing Islam or other religions other than Christianity, the result would have been different. In reality, this will likely not change most of the day-to-day lives of most Americans. The biggest and likely most controversial decision was the one that overturned Roe v. Wade. This is an issue that deeply divides America, and it also is an issue that the court decided by split decision. The fallout has already begun. This decision completely eliminated an individual American's right to choose whether to have an abortion. Instead, the majority of the court took this right of individual Americans, which has existed for nearly 50 years, and instead gave it to the states to decide. Now, abortion is no longer simply the right of an individual American to decide, but the state government gets the first say. Very quickly, states began adopting new legislation. Some states adopted legislation banning or restricting abortions, and other states codified the right for individual citizens of their state to choose for themselves. Some people celebrated and others protested. It is arguably the first decision in modern time that scaled back individual liberty, instead giving power and control over Americans' bodies to the government of the state. Others argue that this gives the states the power to give individual liberty to the future persons of the unborn fetuses, if those unborn fetuses are actually born. One thing is certain, this divides America and Americans. In light of these controversial opinions of the court, I encourage people to remember that whatever side they fall on this issue, we are all Americans, and our country cannot be united if we do not speak with one another and to one another with civility and listen with empathy. Please be kind to your fellow Americans and countrymen. We may not all agree on what rights an individual should have versus what rights the state government has, but we should be empathetic to the views of all Americans, even when we disagree. This is a country of we the people, but right now it's looking like a country of us the people and them the people. That is absolutely wrong, and that view is hurting our great nation. It's time that we practice empathy and stop fighting against our own teammates. We don't have to disagree. We don't have to agree, rather, but our fellow Americans are not the enemies. This month, we are excited to celebrate July 4th, Independence Day. We are all Americans, and though none of us are perfect, we are a great nation because we continually strive to do better. This summer, we can do better by feeling the heat of the climate, but keeping our cool with our fellow Americans. After all, we are all on the same team, and when we listen, we can see that. Enjoy the celebration of Independence Day and be safe until I write you again next month. Although the newsletter will only go out about monthly, the life and spirit of the firm don't stop in between newsletters. Therefore, we believe it is only fair to keep updated on social media by creating website content such as informative articles or blogs to keep you updated in the interim. Essentially, the newsletter will be somewhat of a highlight reel so that you can tune into anything that you missed if you don't want to keep up in real time. We're very excited about our expectations for 2022 and what we've accomplished so far halfway through this year. We hope for some big things for the firm and some big things to help you. Remember, get your legal action with the law firm of Douglas G. Jackson.